Hello, BookTube. Now we're at day 10 of 28 days of science fiction, or you might say shelf 10. As you can see, it's the one right behind me. It is magazines. Not all science fiction, but magazines that had science fiction in them and other types of material, or fantastical material, horror material, weird material, that type of thing. Now, we'll start out with an amazing reference, um, and that is science fiction, fantasy, and weird fiction magazines. This is a crappy print-on-demand cased edition with a square spine that you can see I've been using this, and it's already near falling apart. And it was published by Greenwood Press again, Historical Guides to the World's Periodicals and Newspapers. It's a lot of wonderful titles in here. It's like British literary magazines, the Augustan Age to the Age of Johnson, British literary magazines, the Romantic Age, and the Victorian Edwardian Age. I would love to get these, but they're very expensive reference material. But this is edited by Marshall B. Tim. We've come across him, and I kept saying that we will get back to him. And Mike Ashley. We've seen him as well, and we'll see more of him in the next number of books that are coming up. But what this is an encyclopedia, basically. And it's got an essay of each magazine. So any science fiction magazine that you're thinking of, not sort of some of the semi-professional ones are the prozines, but not fanzines or amateur magazines per se, unless they made a bit of a splash or did something else. Like Locus is in here. There's other ones like Aboriginal Science Fiction, Galileo, because those things made a bit more of a splash. But as I say, they are, like, here we go, New Worlds, and it's an essay that's written that goes on sometimes for 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 pages. Some are very brief entries, but this is an absolutely fabulous reference material, and it was published in 1985. Now, I wasn't happy with the print-on-demand crap, so I was able to find a used copy in cloth. You can see that the binding isn't the best because it makes the spine sort of curl in and ripple there. But it's cloth; it'll last a lot longer. It's a bit rough. It's got bumps on it, but I was very pleased to get this. I'll keep one up here, and I'll have one downstairs because I don't mind that. And I'll keep the one that I'll try to sort of use the crappy print-on-demand one as much as possible. Now we get back to Mike Ashley here with. Now, he originally did a 4-volume history of science fiction magazines, but they were more of an anthology. I'm going to actually go out of camera view here for a second and reach them off the shelf here. To just briefly show them, I'll go into more detail when we get to the anthologies. Now, he did these originally in 4 volumes. They're anthology, like these are the British editions. The paper is very browned, but lovely covers. Very, very interesting covers on them. And they go around the back. But yeah, it's mainly an anthology of science fiction from the magazines from different periods, and there are 4 parts to this, with some interstitial material of the editors, the history. But he didn't leave it just there. He decided to revamp this in the 70s. And these are all by the Liverpool, I always forget, Liverpool Science Fiction Texts and Studies. Now, this one is The Time Machines, the story of the science fiction pulp magazines from the beginning to 1950. And this was published in 2000, and it's signed by Mike Ashley as well, which was a nice addition. Now, I originally had this in paperback, and I read this, but these are not very well made. It's a book that I return to a lot, so I thought I would get a hardcover of it, and I was able to get a signed copy. Now, he goes through, it's a meticulous history. I don't think there'll be anybody that will surpass it's now 5 volumes of his history of the science fiction magazine. It's just so densely packed with information. And it's got appendices like Dictionary of Magazine Editors and Publishers, Directory of Magazine Cover Artists, Summary of Science Fiction Magazines, non-English language science fiction magazines. So he goes to non-English as well. But in the appendices, he gives a little, what do you call this? Column by column of when when these were published, whether it was monthly or if they skipped any months. And it just goes through all the magazines. And as I say, it was published 2000 by Liverpool Science Fiction, or Liverpool University Press. And yeah, and as I say, I've got the 4, we'll get to that in a second. Trying to replace them with hardcovers. This is volume 2 to it. Great cover there. It's the story of the science fiction magazines from 1950 to 1970. These 2 volumes are my main period, but it's so much information that I can't, dismiss the rest of the time either. So I've read these 2 volumes from cover to cover and reconsulted them so many times. And it's the same process. Liverpool University Press. Liverpool Science Fiction Texts and Studies. This was published in 2005, and it's the same material, same way. We've got the editors and the dates. We've got the artists. He even gives he talks about the stories, like the highlights or the bad stories as well. It is his judgment and his assessment, but we don't have the stories to look at. Some of them are new, but you need to, try to find them to assess them yourself. So, and as I say, I don't have this one in hardcover yet, which I do want to replace it. I do have the 3rd one, Gateways Forever. It's a story of science fiction magazines from 1970 to 1980. And it's fairly big. I think this is the biggest one. 2007 by Liverpool University Press. It's volume 3. And it's the same process. He just goes through. This one I have not read from cover to cover yet. It's on my sort of TBR list. There's some of these books I will read from cover to cover. Others I will not. Some of them will be just simply for reference and for reading sections or essays out of it from time to time. So eventually I might, some of the essay ones, finish the books, as and when I need to consult them. But yeah, this is volume 3, and I do have it in paperback as well. And I'll be keeping those. Now, volume 4, I replaced it with a hardcover because Amazon had it on special, but it is I don't know, I have not seen this in original. I don't know if this is a reprint without dust jacket and they plasticized the cover. This is like the print on demand crap, and it was in really rough condition. So Amazon basically said keep it and refunded my money. So this is History of Science Fiction Magazine, Volume 4, and it's a story of science fiction magazines from 1981 to 1990. And this was published in 2016. Again, I'm not read it from cover to cover, and this is the paperback. I don't have the 5th volume, which now comes up to, I think, 2020. I think he comes up to 2020 in the new the new volume 5, and I do want to get that. and I'd like to get it in hardcover before it disappears into this print-on-demand crap. It might already be that, but I don't know. Now, we move on here with the world of fanzines, a special form of communication by Frederick Wortham, MD. It says he's internationally renowned psychiatrist and one of the most highly respected authorities on violence. Is presently consulting psychiatrist at Queens Hospital Center, Jamaica, New York. City born in Bavaria and educated in Europe and the United States. Dr. Wortham, during this 50 years of practice, has served as psychiatric expert. Goes on all this stuff, but his first, he's definitely interested in fanzines. It's few persons outside the science fiction field where historically fanzine publication appears to have begun know the meaning of the portmanteau word fanzine, amateur fan plus magazine. This was published by Southern Illinois University Press, Pfeffer and Simmons and Company as well, in London and Amsterdam, and it was published in 1973. So it's a bit of a history of the fanzine, the road to fanzines, origin and early history, realm of fantasy, science fiction, fantasy, comics, and so on. I have been aware, like most people, of fanzines all my life, basically. As soon as I was interested in science fiction, and I knew that there were fanzines. I think probably the first I ever heard of it or saw it was the Star Trek fanzines. I've never really paid close attention to them until more recently, in my sort of looking for information about Clifford Simak. I've been finding fanzines all over the place that have really good critical material in them about Simak or other authors, and science fiction authors or experts. Mike Ashley has written for fanzines. Sam Moskowitz, well, he started one originally. It's just, it's so rich, and I'm becoming more and more interested in it. It's like when we saw those convention booklets. I'm interested in those now too. They were, again, something that I sort of pushed aside, never really looked at closely, but I am now becoming more and more interested in them. And well, it's a bit of an appeal. If anybody has collection of fanzines out there, regardless of where they're from or when they're from, I am interested in them. So if you have a stack and you don't know what to do with them, please get in touch with me, because I would love to have them, to go through them. So there we go, fanzines. I better leave that out. I'm getting a little tight in here to pull books out. Now here we go, is a comprehensive index to Black Mask, 1920 to 1951, by E.R. Hagman. Yeah, Black Mask magazine, everybody is, I'm sure, aware of. This is an index. As I say, it's not solely science fiction that I have here. It is literally an index to the magazine. And I've got other magazine indexes as well, but I ran out of space on the shelf, and the larger volumes have been moved down to the bottom. This is a bit damaged, but it's Bowling Green State University Popular Press. E.R. Hagman, compiler and editor. It's with brief annotations, preface, and editorial apparatus. And yeah, so that's exactly what it is. Very interesting. Now, again, I do dislike these print-on-demand cased books. But anyway, here we go. This is The Secret Origins of Weird Tales, The Things Incredible, 1923 to 1924, the struggle to establish the first fantastic fiction magazine and the bruising toll endured by publishers, editors, authors, and readers, by John Locke. This looks marvelous. I have not had a chance to read this or look at it much. It was sent to me, Off Trail Publications, published in 2018. Yeah. It's just literally history and the beginning of Weird Tales and how it took so much to get going. It says herein lies a sweeping revisionist history of the founding of Weird Tales and one of the most influential and entertaining pulp magazines of all time. Its first 2 years, 23 to 24, was a period of tumult and controversy unequaled in the pulps. So that will be an interesting read that will probably go from cover to cover. Here we go. Now we got Cheap Thrills, the amazing, thrilling, astonishing history of pulp fiction by Ron Goulart. We've come across him before. He's actually written fiction as well. This is badly sunned on the spine, but it is highly thought of. And I've had this in the past, and I'm not sure if I've read it all. I know I've read sections of it, like Dime Detectives and so forth. Bringing the years between dime novels of the 19th century and today's paperbacks, pulp magazines provide millions of readers with their first and only taste of literature. It's an informal history of the pulp magazine. So it was published Arlington House, 1972. This one is sort of a recent acquisition that I purchased myself about 4 years ago. This is, it's hard to say, The Fiction Factory by Quentin Reynolds. Beautiful, beautiful dust jacket that's in really good condition, this book. It is from The Fiction Factory, or From Pulp Row to Quality Street. And I got this because of sort of dime novel publications in the history, but also it's 100 years of publishing at Street and Smith, who eventually owned, in the 30s, bought out Astounding and other magazines. This is the first printing from 1955, and it's wonderfully done. The whole production of it is quite amazing. The color reproductions of the pictures are amazing, and as you can see on the back, it's just a wonderful design. It's a wonderful design. The spine, I don't think it's faded at all. It's in amazing condition. But yeah, it's just a history. Random House, 1955, and yeah, it starts out with the weeklies. Do we have a table of contents? There is no table of contents. Odd. Yeah. So I look forward to reading this eventually at some point. Probably this shelf has the most books on, like on one shelf that I want to read from cover to cover. Here's another one, The Shutter Pulps. 1930s and Follies, a history of the weird menace magazines of the 1930s by Robert Kenneth Jones. Now, the Shutter Pulps are the weird menace ones. Were just very violent depictions of violence, and very graphic at times depiction in the pulps. They were sort of set aside from the normal pulps at the time. And this is Fax Collector's Editions. This only includes the 1930s, but they did go into the 40s, I believe. This was published in 1975, and it goes through the weirdest stories ever told. Mr. Popular versus Little Giant, Secret Shines of Mystery, Blood Brothers, Purple. It just goes through and through. And again, this is something that I would probably want to read from cover to cover, I think. Let's see here. Yeah, there's another. There's quite a few things. There's a whole history, or several volumes of pulp heroes, and this is sort of a one volume that does, like, there's a series of 4 or 5 volumes, but it's the Pulp Heroes by Don Hutchinson, by Mosaic Press, published 1996, and it's signed by the author. Well, and yeah, and you can see the shadow. And yeah, it just goes through the shadow, Doc for Doc Savage, G8's Weird War, the Spider's Web, 20 Years of Murder, Black Bats and Green Ghosts, Calling Captain Future. Yeah, lots of quite interesting stuff, and this will be something that I will read again. Like I say, there's a lot here that I would like to read from cover to cover. Now, this is going back to Sam Moskowitz. This is an anthology as well, but it's also a history through that. It's edited with history by Sam Moskowitz. It's Under the Moons of Mars, a history of the an anthology of the scientific romance in the Muncie magazines, 1912 to 1920. And this was published by Holt, Reinhardt, and Winston, 1970. And as I say, there's it's got like Edgar Rice Burroughs' Under the Moons of Mars, Darkness and Dawn by George Allen England, Polaris of the Snows by Charles B. Stilson, Palos of the Dog Star Pack by J.U. Geisy, Friend Island by Francis Stevenson, The Moon Pool by A. Merritt, Ray Cummings, The Girl in the Golden Atom, The Mad Planet, Murray Leinster, Blind Spots by Austin Hall and Homer and Flint. And now we've got like commentary throughout. But as I say, it is an anthology, but it's a history anthology. It's sort of like what Mike Ashley did originally with the magazines, but this is more specific for the scientific romances in the magazines. This one took me a long time to get. It's again Advent Publishers. As I say, I probably have, barring 4 or 5 publications that they did, or at least when they were Advent, before they were sold out, or before they were sold. This is Astounding. It is a Requiem for Astounding, by Alva Rogers, with editorial comments by Harry Bates and F. Orland Tremaine and John W. Campbell. So Harry Bates started out as the publisher. F. Orland Tremaine took over once it was sold to Street and Smith, and then John W. Campbell took over from him. And this was published in 1964. It's really, really great illustrations throughout. The text is almost like a dot matrix sort of one, so it's a bit difficult to read. But it took me a long time to get this, and I really, really am pleased that I do have this. And in such good shape with the dust jacket. This, again, was owned by George W. Early. George W. Early, who was a collector and fan of science fiction in the U.S. Now we've got Astounding Science Fiction, Paul A. Carter, The Creation of Tomorrow, 50 Years of Magazine Fiction, of Science Magazine Science Fiction, Columbia University Press, 1977. It is another sort of history of science fiction magazines, but not obviously that detailed for the size of it. I've had this in the past, and I can't remember if I've read it from cover to cover or not. But this is something that I would. It's from the earliest pulp magazines of the 20s to the hardbound respectability of the space age. Science fiction has traditionally been the literary vehicle for thrusting into the unknown, both the roads not taken by history and the future that awaits us. The Creation of Tomorrow, historian Paul A. Carter, author of Another Part of the 20s, surveys 50 years of magazine science fiction in the United States and abroad. So it covers Similar ground to Mike Ashley's history of magazines, but not in as great a detail. This was another one, Advent Publishers again, that I ordered a hardcover from the U.S. and it just never showed up. And it was really expensive, but I had it was either Christmas or birthday gift money when I was, years ago when I was working. And so I thought I'd get it. But it never showed up. So I eventually got my money back. So I bought a digital reprint of it, and this ugly digital reprint, the Galaxy magazine Dark in the Light Years by David L. Rosham. Galaxy, as many of you know, magazine started in 1950. In October 1950, and there was serialization of Time and Again. Is it Time and Again? I think it is. Yeah. But it was actually called Time Quarry in the in the magazine of Clifford Simak, and it was just a magazine I really liked. It was started by H.L. Gold. It took over eventually by Frederick Pohl, and yeah, it's an amazing magazine that I really like. But anyway, I wanted this so much, and I got this. It's a reprint in large print as well. It's just an ugly thing, but then finally I found the hardcover, Advent, an original hardcover of it. And it's even so much nicer. It's got, that's a very nice reproduction there. 1986. It's not an academic history. It's more of a conversational history of Galaxy magazine. And thankfully it has an index in it, which is very useful. Again, I have to read this from cover to cover at some point. But yeah, I'm very pleased to have this. And I just noticed there's some bumps in the corners, and I wonder if that happened in the back, probably packing or somehow. Anyway, I'm very pleased to have this. Now, the other magazine that sort of started around that time, or a year before, in 1949, with one issue, was the magazine Fantasy and Science Fiction. It was edited by Anthony Boucher and John, surname was McComas. Anthony Boucher and I can't remember, John McComas. This is a history by, edited by Annette Peltz. McComas, introduction by Theodore Sturgeon. This is a very, very rough copy, paperback, a mass market paperback, published by Bantam Books in 1982. And it is a history of a magazine of fantasy and science fiction, but it's again a collection of essays. It's got the editors, autobiographies of the editors, the birth and the growth. It's a really, really good. There's an article by Ray Bradbury, Al Sprague de Camp, and Fletcher Pratt, Alfred Bester, Zena Henderson, Richard Matheson, Sherwood Springer, and the editors of this. Chad Oliver, Damon Knight, Manly Wade Wellman, Ron Goulart, Isaac Asimov, Anthony Boucher, Paul Anderson, Philip K. Dick, Herman Mudgett, Evelyn E. Smith, Isaac Asimov again, Gordon R. Dixon, J. Francis McComas, that's what it is, J. Francis McComas, Andre Norton, R. Bretner, Randall Garrett. Yeah, it's a fabulous little book. I had it many, many years ago. I have read it, and then I was looking for one about 4 or 5 years ago, and that's the only one that I could find that wasn't sort of stupidly prohibitive in price. And I don't know if it ever came out in hardcover. I don't think it ever did, but I would love to have a better condition copy of this. Now, oh, that was sort of a bit out of place, but this here is another anthology of Galaxy magazines, 30 years of innovative science fiction, edited by Frederick Pohl, Martin H. Greenberg, and Joseph D. Olander, who we've seen already with the writers of the 21st century on mostly on this shelf here. This is stories like fiction. It's an anthology, but it also has interstitial material that talks about writing of writing for Galaxy. There's an introduction by Frederick Pohl about Horace Gold, H.L. Gold, and then we got The Served Man and memoir by Damon Knight. That was in November 1950. So that was the second issue that had To Serve Man. And it just goes through. There's Robert Sheckley, William Tenn, Margaret St. Clair, sort of a forgotten female author of science fiction. Zena Henderson, Cordwainer Smith, Judith Merrill, Algis Budrys, Jim Harmon, Alan Danzig, Phil K. Dick, Isaac Asimov, Robert Silver, Larry Niven, James Tiptree, Algis Budrys, Theodore Sturgeon, R.A. Lafferty, Ursula K. Le Guin, Harlan Ellison, Frederick Pohl, and C.M. Cornbooth, John Varley, Alfred Bester, and then there's an index to the magazine from 1950 to May 1979. It more or less ended in 1980. Strangely, there is no Simak in here. I don't know why, whether he wasn't able to contribute to this. It was published in 1980 by Playboy Press. There is a second volume. I have it somewhere. It's a mass market paperback that's along these lines. I don't know if it was ever done in a hardcover like this, but I was so glad to get a replacement copy of this that I used to have a long time ago. Now we come to the last three volumes, to British science fiction magazines. Now this one's Strange Highways. Oh, actually, no. Let's start with volume 1. Building New Worlds, 1946 to 1959, the Carnell era, volume 1. John Boston and Damien Roderick. Now, this is literally a history of the beginning of New Worlds magazine with John Carnell. Again, it's something that I've got to read from cover to cover because my interest in British science fiction has grown, and it is I'm less confident with British science fiction in the magazines in the UK here than I should be, or that I want to be. And then we got the Before the New Wave, 1960, 1964, volume 2, with John Boston, Damien Roderick. Volume 1 was published by the Bargo Press, 1993. Oh no, 2013. The Bargo Press was sold with those Wild Side books that this was done. And then volume 2 is 2013 again. These were originally published as paperbacks. Let me put those two back. The third one is called Strange Highways. It's not really a part of the set, but it's reading science fiction 1950 to 1967. And it's more about science fantasy magazine, which there's a companion 3-volume collection of science fiction stories from the magazine. It published both fantasy and science fiction, and science fantasy as well. And this was published 2012, so this predates those, but it's the same John Boston and Damien Roderick, which again, things I do need to read. I think that's it for this shelf. Yes, that's it for this shelf. So we will move on to shelf 10. 10, and then 11, and then is that right? Let me see here. 10. volume 8, 9, 10. No, this is shelf 11. Have I got these wrong? So yeah, so I might have misspoken for the previous videos, so do look at the titles instead, because this is actually day 11 that I've just done here. Yes, day 11 and shelf 11. Thank you, BookTube.